JinPingMei Original Version Chapter 12 Pan Jinlian's personal servant is humiliated, Liu Lixing's nightmare wins, and she seeks wealth. It is said that Simon King was obsessed with Sister Gui's beauty in the courtyard and did not come home for about half a month. Wu Yunyang asked the servant to pick up the horse several times. The Li family hid all Simon King's clothes and hats and did not let him get up. All the women in the lost family were quiet. Others are good, but Pan Jinlian is a woman who is not yet 30 years old and can't hold back the fire of desire even 10 feet tall. Dressed up every day with pink makeup and jade, white teeth and red lips. She leans against the front door and looks at it every day, only waiting until dusk. In the evening, I went back to my room, sleeping in a lonely curtain, without a companion on the Phoenix Terrace. I couldn't sleep, so I walked into the garden and walked among the flowers and moss. Seeing the bottom of the moonlit water, he suspected that Simon King had a difficult temperament. He happened to meet a tortoiseshell cat having sex, which made him more and more confused. At that time, Yulu brought a young boy named Kintong. He was about 16 years old and had only grown his hair. Simon King taught him to take care of the garden, and he rested in a small wing room at the front of the garden gate in the evening. Jinlian and Yulu often spend their days doing needlework or playing chess on a pavilion in the garden. This young man was very attentive. He often saw Simon King coming and would report to him first. The woman liked him so much that she often invited him into her room and offered him wine and food. The two of them looked at each other day and night, and they were both interested in each other. Unexpectedly, in July, Simon King's birthday is approaching. Wu Yunyang saw that Simon King was nostalgic for the fireworks, so she sent Diane to pick up the horses. Pan Jinlian secretly made a note and handed it to Dan, saying, "Give it to your father quietly and tell Wu Nying to ask father to go home early." Danner rode all the way to Li's house and saw only Earl Ying and Zi Zaida, Zhu Xinian, Sun Zizui, and Chang Jiji were all there, accompanying Simon King, hugging their fans and drinking happily. When Simon King saw Dan coming, he asked, "Why are you here? Is everything okay at home?" Dan said, "Everything is okay at home." Simon King said, "I asked Uncle Fu to collect all the money in front of me and settle the accounts when I get home." And said, "Second, Uncle Fu has asked for a lot in the past 2 days. I'll wait until Dad comes home to pay the account." Simon King said, "Didn't your Aunt Gui bring you that set of clothes?" Dan said, "I've sent them here." Then he went to Zhabao. He took out a red shirt and blue skirt and handed it to Sister Gui. Sister Gui said one blessing, took it, and hurriedly distributed it to her subordinates to take care of Diane's food and wine. After the boy had finished his meal, he came back to wait on him. He whispered quietly into Simon King's ear, "Wu Nying asked me to send a message here, please go home early." Simon King was about to pick it up with his hand, but Sister Li Gui had already seen it and said it was Simon King's cousin. I took the love letter from my wife, opened it and looked at it. But it turned out to be a piece of palindrome paper with a few lines of ink written on it. Sister Gui handed it to Zhu Xinian and asked him to listen to it. "I wish you could see a poem written above, called Falling Plum Blossoms, and read, I think about it at dusk. Think about it during the day, and hope that murder will not come to pass. Because he languished and died for him, and he was so pitiful that he embroidered quilts alone. The lamp is about to burn out and people are sleeping, leaving only half the window open to the bright moon. My heart is as hard as iron. How can I survive this desolate night?" The next letter reads, "Blessings to my beloved concubine Pan Liuer." After hearing this, Sister Gui left the banquet, walked into the room, fell on the bed, and fell asleep facing inside. Seeing that Sister Gui was angry, Simon King tore the post to pieces and kicked Diane twice in front of everyone. When Sister Gui didn't come after asking her twice, Simon King panicked and went into the room in person, took him out and said, "Take the horse back with us. The whore at home asked you to come. I'll beat him to death as soon as I get home." Diane had no choice but to go home in tears. Simon King said, "Sister Gui, don't be upset. This post is not from anyone else. It was sent by my 5th concubine. She invited me home to discuss something. There is no other reason," Zhu Xinian said jokingly. "Sister Gui, don't let him coax you. This Panliur is a new cousin in the courtyard over there, and he is a good-looking person. Don't let him go." Simon King smiled and hurriedly beat him. He said, "You damn bastard. You killed someone by yourself. And you are still talking nonsense when you stick to him as a prisoner." Li Gixing said, "Brother-in-law, since someone is in custody at home, there is no need to comb his hair. Just stay at home. We have only been together for a long time. And then we are about to leave." Earl Ying interjected, "That makes sense. You to rely on me, and the high officials don't need to go home." Gui's sister, "There is no need to be upset. As I said today, if that person continues to relapse, each person will be fined details of silver, and we can buy wine for everyone to eat." So Simon King held Sister Gui in his arms and laughed with her, giving her a sip of wine. Xiao King brought 7 cups of tea, which was fragrant and fragrant. 1 cup was placed in front of each person. Earl Ying said, "I have a song to tell you the benefits of this tea. Chao Jianzi, the tender buds of this fine tea grow in a spring breeze. The leaves are not picked or picked, but the color is bright when cooked. It is exquisite and unique, difficult to describe and paint. He always sips in his mouth, misses him when he is drunk, and loves him when he wakes up. It turns out that a basket of them is worth 1,000 gold. What's the point of this cure? Nowadays, everyone has lyrics and lyrics, but if they don't know lyrics, everyone tells a joke and drinks with Sister Gui." It's time to thank Zaida for saying this, because he said, "There was a plasterer who was working on the ground in the courtyard. My mother neglected him, so he secretly blocked up the gutter with bricks. It rained later, and the yard was filled with water. My mother panicked and asked for him. We wined and dined with him more, and even weighed a penny of silver and asked him to find out the level. After the mason had dined and dined, he quietly went to the gutter to take out the brick, and the water immediately ran out. My mother asked the builder, 'Where is this disease?' The plasterer replied, 'This disease is the same as your old man's disease. If you have money, you will lose money, but if you don't have money, you will lose money.' When Sister Gui saw that his family was injured, she said, 'I also have one. It's a joke. Everyone, there was a real man named Sun who was preparing a banquet to invite people, but he taught the tiger to invite the guests. The tiger ate all the guests on the way. The real man waited until nightfall, but not a single guest arrived. Suddenly the tiger, when he came, the real person asked, 'Where have all the guests you invited gone?' The tiger uttered human words, 'I tell the master that I never know how to invite people. I only eat them in vain.' Everyone was injured at that moment. Earl Ying said, 'It's obvious that we are as chewing for nothing. How can your lonely old man not be able to afford a host?' Then he pulled a piece of tremella fusifolio on his head, weighing 1 penny. Zishi wore a pair of gold-plated mesh scarves, circle and weigh 9.5 cents. Zhu Xinian took out an old sweat towel from his sleeve and counted 200 cents. Sun Zizui took off a white cloth skirt from his waist and used it as 2.5 jugs of wine. Chang Zhiji, not showing respect, he asked Simon King to borrow a penny. The capital sent it to Gui King to set up a host and invite Simon King and Sister Gui. Gixing paid all the money to Bauer, bought a penny of pork, slaughtered a chicken, and arranged some side dishes at home. Big plates and small bowls were brought up, and everyone sat down and said something about moving chopsticks to eat. It was too late to say that, but it was quick to say that, but they saw. Everyone moved their mouths and everyone lowered their heads. Covering the sky and reflecting the sun, they were like locusts coming together. They winked and shook their shoulders, as if they had just escaped from a prison of hunger. This arm that steals the wind is like a person who has not seen wine and food for years. That person who has 3 chopsticks in a row is like a person who has not had a feast for many years. One's face was covered with sweat, but he seemed to have a grudge against chicken bone boiled. The other smeared his lips with oil and swallowed the pig pelts. When eating slices, the cup and plate are in a mess. When eating, chopsticks are everywhere. This one is called the Marshal of the Food King, and that one is called the General of the Clean Pan. The wine pot is dried and poured again, and the plate of food is gone to explore. Exactly. The delicacies and flavors are all taken to the temple of the 5 internal organs. At that moment, everyone ate the pure light King Buddha. Simon King and Sister Gui couldn't eat more than 2 glasses of wine, so they picked some vegetables, which were eaten by the group again. That day, 2 chairs were folded on the banquet. The boy following the horse in front was not allowed to come up and eat. He overturned the land in front of the door and took a dip in the hot feces of Guju. Before going out, Sun Zizui stuffed the gold-plated bronze Buddha offered in Li Jiaming's room into his trousers. Count Ying pushed Sister Du Gui to kiss her and played with the gold needle on her head. Zixi hid the Ximen Qingchuan fan. Zhu Xinian went to Geeking's room to see him and slipped a mercury mirror away from him. The silver coin Chang Jiji borrowed from Ximen King was written on the whoring account. It turns out that this group of people was very happy just playing with Ximen King. There is poetry to prove it. Gong Yan covers her sleeves and is as charming as a wolf. You can stay here temporarily when you are free. If you want to die insatiably, who will receive the golden key in your house? The crowd gathered round Ximen King and drank. When Shan Baodan returned home, Wu Yunyang, Meng Yulu and Pan Jinlian were sitting in the room. When they saw her, she asked Dan, "Have you gone to pick up Dad?" Dan's eyes were red from crying and she said, "Dad was killed. The little one came after being kicked and scolded. Dad said that if he was picked up by anyone, he would be scolded when he came home." Yunyang then said, "You think it's unreasonable. Why do you scold the boy again if he doesn't come to the toilet?" Meng Yulu said, "You can just kick the young boy. How can you even scold us in the future?" Pan Jinlian said, 10 or 9 prostitutes in the courtyard. What kind of relationship do they have with you? As the saying goes, the gold and silver carried by ships cannot fill up the fireworks village. Jin Lian just said it, but Li Zhaoer didn't expect to see Dan coming home from the courtyard, so he came to the window and listened. Seeing Jin Lian scolding the thousands of prostitutes in his family, she secretly harbored a grudge. From then on, the two became enemies. No problem. Exactly. Sweet words are warm in 3 winters, but bad words are hurtful in 6 months. Not to mention the feud between Li Jiar and Pan Jinlian. The single golden lotus returned to the room. One moment is like 3 autumns, and one moment is like Penelia. Knowing that Ximen King would not come home, he sent the 2 girls to sleep, pushed them to play in the garden, and called the piano boy into the room to have wine and dinner with him. Get the boy drunk, close the door, take off his clothes and belt, and the 2 of them have sex together. But see, one doesn't care whether he is high or low, and the other doesn't care about his superiority or inferiority. One is cowardly and cares about her husband's interests. The other is lustful and ignores the strict rules of his law. The garden is transformed into a happy scene. The mistress's room is transformed into a world of pleasure. In an instant, a drop of donkey essence poured into the golden lotus and jade body. From then on, the woman called the piano boy into the room every night. Send it out before dawn. Behind his back, he put 2 or 3 gold hairpins on his head, and also gave him the brocade sachet and gourd on his skirt. Little did he know that this young boy did not keep his duty and often went out on the street to drink and play with other young boys, which exposed his secrets. As the saying goes, if you don't know, don't do anything. One day, the wind blew into the ears of Sun Zue and Li Jiar, saying, "Thieves and whores, we usually pretend to be innocent. How come we did it today?" They all came to sue Yunyang. Yunyang repeatedly refused to believe her and said, "I'm not asking you to join forces with him. Aren't you going to offend 3rd Sister Meng? I'm just asking you to win over his servants." The 2 people who said this left without saying a word. The backward woman was working in her room with her servant at night and forgot to close the kitchen door. She didn't want her girl Qiu to come out to clean her hands and see her. The next day, I passed the message to Xiaoyu, who said to Zue. Zue and Li Jiar came again and told Yunyang, the girls in his house said it with their own mouths. And it's not like we will bury him. If the aunt doesn't say it, we will tell his father. If we spare this adulteress, we must save Scorpion. It was the 27th day of the 7th lunar month, and Ximen King came from the courtyard to celebrate his birthday. Yunyang said, "He just came home, and it's a good time for him. You don't listen to me. Just say it. When he starts to rebel, I won't care about you." The 2 refused to listen to Yunyang, and Ximen King entered the room as promised. Chi Lai told Jin Lian how to raise a little boy at home. If Simon King doesn't listen, everything will come to an end. If he hears this, his anger will rise from the top of his heart, and his evil will come from his guts. I walked to the front and sat down, and everyone called Kin Tunger. Someone had reported it to Pan Jinlian a long time ago. Jinlian panicked, so Chanmai hurriedly called the servant to the room, told her not to tell anyone, and took all the hairpins from her head. In a panic, I forgot to take off the sachet and gourd. Simon King called him to the front hall and knelt down. He was assigned 3 or 4 boys to serve on a big board. Simon King said, "Thief slave, do you know your crime?" The piano boy did not dare to speak for a long time. Simon King ordered the people around him, "Take off his hairpin and let me see." Seeing that the hairpin was gone, he asked, "Where did the gold-wrapped silver hairpin you wore go?" The piano boy said, "The small one is not that big. Silver hairpin." Simon King said, "My slave is still causing trouble." He stripped off his clothes and beat him with a board. Then 2 or 3 boys helped. One of them, stripping off his clothes and pulling off his trousers. I saw that he was wearing jade-colored silk under his body, with a brocade sachet and gourd exposed on his belt. When Simon King saw it, he shouted, "Bring it up and let me see." He recognized it as the object Pan Jinlian wore on his skirt. Unconsciously, he was furious and asked him, "Where did you get this thing? Tell the truth. Who is it with you? Is it?" The boy was so frightened that he couldn't speak for a long time and said, "This is what I found in the garden when I was cleaning it one day. No one has ever been with me." Simon King became more and more angry and ordered with gritted teeth, "It's really hard to tie him up with me. Beat him." Then he stretched the piano boy's legs and hit him with 30 sticks, until the skin and flesh were torn and blood dripped down his legs. He also called Lai Bao, "Take my servants to hairs from my temples, drive him out and don't let him in again." The piano boy kowtowed and went out crying. When Pan Jinlian heard it in the room, it was like holding a basin of cold water. After a while, Simon King came into the room, trembling with fear and without a pulse. He was carefully helping the waiter to pick up the clothes. Simon King slapped her face and slapped the woman. Fu Chanmai said, "Put up the front and rear corner doors, don't let anyone in." He took a small chair, sat under the flower stand in the courtyard, took a horsewhip, held it in his hand, and ordered, Whore, take off your clothes and kneel down." The woman knew that she was in the wrong and didn't dare not to kneel down. She really took off her clothes and knelt in front of her, with her face lowered, not daring to say a word. Simon King then asked, "Thief and whore, don't tell me what happened in your sleep. I have interrogated my slave, and he has confessed everything. Tell the truth. How many times did you steal with him when I was not at home?" The woman then he cried, "Oh my God, you can't just kill me unjustly. Since you have been away from home for half a month, I only do acupuncture with Ming Sanner during the day, and close the door early in the evening." So he went to bed. He didn't dare to come out of this corner door because he had nothing to do. If you don't believe it, just ask Chanmai. What is salt and vinegar? Is there something he doesn't know? He called Chanmai, "Sister, come here. Tell your father." Simon King scolded, "Whore. Some people say that you stole 2 or 3 gold hairpins from your head to the slave. How can you deny it?" The woman said, "I just killed the slave. That's it. She's that arrogant whore who doesn't get a chance to die," chewing on her vigorous body. "Seeing that you often come into the slave's room to rest, she is just angry and takes it as a matter of day and night. You're in vain. Even the hairpins you have are all there, 1, 5 and 10. Check it out. Why can't I think of anything to do with that slave? A slave who is so talented is in vain, but he can't urinate." "You slave, Mao, you are trying to make a fool of me," Simon King said. "Do you have the hairpin?" He took out the sachet from his sleeve and said, "This is your thing. How can I pinch it under my body? Come out. Why are you so strong-willed?" As they spoke, they all became annoyed and slapped a horsewhip on his white flesh. The blow made the woman feel unbearable pain. Her eyes filled with pink tears, and she shouted without any words, "Good daddy, please spare the slave. If you let the slave say what you say, you will beat the slave to death, and you will only stink up the land." This sachet gourd, if you are not at home, the slave will be with you that day. Third sister Meng was working in the garden. She passed under the wood incense shed and her belt wasn't fastened tightly, so she grabbed her and dropped it to the ground. I didn't find it there, but I didn't know that the slave had found it. The slave had never been with him. This is the only sentence. Just as the piano boy said in his confession, he saw a woman stripped naked, with a body like a flower, crying softly. Kneeling on the ground, the anger had already penetrated into the kingdom of Java, and her heart had returned. When he was 8 or 9 minutes old, he called JinPingMei, held him in his arms, and asked him, "Is the whore really related to the young man? You said you should spare the whore, so I will." That JinPingMei acted coquettishly and foolishly. Sitting in Simon King's arms, said, "This, Dad, you have nothing to say. My mother and I have been inseparable all day long, and my mother is willing to be with that slave. Are these people so angry that my ladies would do such a thing? Dad, do you also want an idea, so that you can put your ugly name on your head and spread it to the outside world?" Simon King was speechless with a few words, threw away his riding whip, and asked Jin Lian to get up and put on clothes. Qiu was given to look at the dishes, and a table was set for the wine. The woman filled a glass of wine, handed it to her with both hands, and knelt on the ground, waiting for him to wait. Simon King paid and said, "I will spare you today. If I were not at home and wanted you to clean up your mind and correct yourself, I would have closed the door long ago and not allowed you to think wildly. If I knew, I would not spare you." The woman said, "You pay, I know." After kowtowing to Simon King for more times, he sat down and drank with him. Pan Jinlian was so doted on by Simon King on weekdays, and today she was subjected to this humiliation. Exactly. As a human being, don't live like a woman. 100 years of happiness and suffering will be left to others. At that moment, Simon King was drinking in Jinlian's room, when suddenly a young man knocked on the door and said, "There are Uncle Wu, second Uncle Wu, Mr. Fu, daughter, son-in-law, and relatives in front of me to send gifts to celebrate my birthday." He just left Jinlian behind and went out to wait with him. Guests. At that time, everyone including Earl Ying and Shi was very kind, and Sister Li Gui's family in the courtyard also sent Bauer to bring gifts. Simon King was busy collecting gifts from others and sending out invitations. Meng Yulu inquired about Jin Lian's humiliation, and Simon King, whom he had arranged to meet, was not in the room, so he came to visit without telling Li Jiar and Sun Zui. Seeing Jin Lian sleeping on the bed, he asked, "Sixth sister, what's the reason for you? Tell me about it." Jin Lian's eyes were full of tears, and she cried, "Third sister, look at the little whore. She is instigating you behind the scenes today. Man, beat me up. Tomorrow I will have deep enmity with these 2 whores." Yulu said, "You have a flaw with him. How can you pretend to get my little boy out?" Sixth sister, don't worry. Is there a man who won't listen to what we say? If he doesn't come into my room tomorrow, that's it, but come into my room and wait for me to slowly persuade him. Jin Lian said, "Thank you sister for taking the trouble." He asked JinPingMei to watch the tea and eat it. After sitting down and talking, Yulu went back to his room. In the evening, Simon King went to the Yulu room to rest for the night because Wu Daguzi, his superior, came. Yuluian said, "Don't worry about Sixth sister in vain. Sixth sister has nothing to do with it. She just had a conversation with Li Jiar and Sun Sui a few days ago, so she punished my young man for nothing. If you don't ask about it, I just gave him up, but it's not hard for him. I'll make a big bet for him. If this happens, is there anything eldest sister doesn't say first?" Simon King said. "I asked JinPingMei. He is also like this." That's what he said. Yulu said, "It's not good for him to be in his room today. Why don't you go and see him?" Simon King said, "I know. I'll go to his room tomorrow." There was nothing to say that night. On the second day, Simon Xinjiang's birthday, Zhou Xiaobai, Jia Tixing, Zhang Tuanlian, Uncle Wu and many other officials were drinking. They picked up Sister Li Gui and 2 singers in a sedan chair and sang for a day. When Li Jiar saw his niece coming, he led everyone who was paying homage to Yunyang to sit and have tea in the upper room. I invited Pan Jinlian to see me, and I asked the girl to invite her twice. Jinlian didn't come out. She just said she felt bad. In the evening, Sister Gui went home to pay her last respects to Yunyang. Yunyang and Li Jier sent him out of the house with a cloud silk beejier, a sweat scarf, and a flower emerald flower. Sister Gui went to the corner gate of the Golden Lotus Garden in person and said, "At least I can meet Wu Niang." When Jinlian heard him coming, Chunmai closed the corner gate like an iron barrel and said, "My mother paid for it, but I don't dare to bloom it." The mother then came back with a face full of embarrassment and said nothing. Shan Bao Ximen King came into Jinlian's room late at night. The Golden Lotus with disheveled temples and tired face welcomed him into the room. He took off his clothes and belt for him, served him tea, soup and feet, and helped him in every possible way. At night, he would lie on the mat and have fun. He would bend down and endure the humiliation. He would do anything and say, "My brother, who in this family loves you?" They are all married couples who marry each other. Only the slave knows your heart, and you know the slave's intention. Others see it. You love the slave so much, and many people around the slave are not angry. They use their tongues behind their backs to instigate you. My silly enemy, what do you think of the trick of the enemy? And your beloved, what a merciless setback for a man. As the saying goes, the chickens beat like crazy, but the pheasants beat like crazy. You beat the slave to death, only in this room. Even the day before yesterday, you kicked and scolded me in the yard. When the boy came, there were already eldest sister and third sister Meng in front of me. Didn't I say, I'm afraid his fans will spoil your health? The singing in the courtyard is all about money. What's the plot? Who cares? You, who would have thought that someone with intentions would hear it and form a gang behind my back to plot against me? Since ancient times, people have harmed others, but God has harmed others. It will become clear in the future. As long as you and the slave are the master. A few words stopped Simon Qingwo. It was a night of excessive lust with him. A few days later, Simon King prepared his horse, followed by Dan and Ping An, and came to the courtyard, but it was said that Sister Li Gui was dressing up to sit with someone. When she heard him coming, she quickly walked into the room, washed off her heavy makeup, except for the hairpin ring, and fell down on the bed wrapped in a quilt. Simon King walked over and sat there for a long time before his mother came out, wished Simon King good luck, asked Simon King to sit down, and asked, "Why doesn't my brother-in-law come in for a walk in a row?" "There is no one at home," Qianpo said. "Sister, I disturbed you that day." Simon King said, "Why didn't Gixing come for a walk that day?" Qianpo said, "Gixing was not at home, and was taken to the store by a guest. Here, I haven't let him go for the past few days." After talking for a long time, he brought tea to accompany him. Simon King then asked, "Why don't you see Sister Gui?" Qianpo said, "Brother-in-law, I don't know yet, but for some reason, I was upset the day at home. I couldn't get up when I came home and fell asleep. The door of the room she has not given birth to her daughter until now. My brother-in-law is so cruel that he does not come to see my sister." Simon King said, "Really? I don't know." Yin asked, "In that room, let me have a look." Qianpo said, "Sleep in the bedroom behind him." She hurriedly asked the maid to lift the curtain. When Simon King walked into his room, he saw dark clouds scattered about his pink hair, and his face was carelessly made up. He was wrapped in quilt and sitting on the bed, facing inward. When he saw Simon King, he didn't move at all. Simon King said, "What's wrong with you coming home that day?" He didn't agree. He asked again, "Who are you troubled by? Tell me." After asking for a long time, Sister Gui spoke up and said, "On the left and right are the fifth wives of your family. There are good people in your family who welcome guests and show off their charms, and they also come here. Why do you care about whores like us? Even though we are from a humble background, with our legs crossed, we are much taller than the good-natured people outside. I wasn't singing at the ceremony the day before yesterday, so I also sent favors. What will happen to my aunt when she sees me?" It was affectionate, and he gave me many flowers and green clothes. If he didn't invite him to see me, he said that there was no etiquette in our courtyard. "I heard that you had a fifth lady in your family, so I immediately invited him to see me, but didn't come out. When I came home, I said goodbye to my girl. When he goes, he makes the girl close the door. Duan is so disrespectful, Simon King said. Don't blame him. His Japanese are not at ease. If he is good, there will be someone who won't come out to see you. This whore, I have to beat him several times because he bites Quinair and hurts others with his mouth. Sister Gui swiped Simon King's face with her backhand and said, You have no shame, brother. Just beat him, Simon King said. You still don't know my methods. In addition to my house, these wives and girls at home are also not good at beating. I can't beat them with 20 or 30 horsewhips. Is it good or bad? Cut it off, Sister Gui said. I have seen beheaders, but not mouth blowers. You beat 3 officials and sing 2 songs. Who will come if you have the ability? You can only cut off a willow of hair at home. Bring it to me and see. I believe you are a famous disciple of our 3 colleges, Simon King said. You dared to fight with me. Sister Gui said, I will fight with you 100 times. That day Simon King rested in the courtyard all night. At dusk the next day, he bid farewell to Sister Gui and mounted his horse to go home. Sister Gui said, Brother, if you don't have this thing when you go, let's see how you behave in front of me. This made Simon Kinky angry and said a few words. He was already drunk when he returned home. Instead of going to another room, he came to Pan Jinlian's room. When the woman saw that he had wine, she served him attentively, asked him whether he would eat or drink. Fu Chunmai wiped the pillows and mats on the bed clean, took them to the door and went out. He sat on the bed and asked the woman to take off her boots. The woman dared not take off her clothes. After a while, he took off his boots and sent him to bed. Simon Kingji stayed up and sat on a pillow. He asked the woman to take off her clothes and kneel on the ground. The woman was so frightened that she sweated, and she didn't know why, so she knelt on the ground and cried softly, My dad, if you talk to this slave cleverly, I will be willing to die. I am in fear all day long. I tried 1,000 times to be careful, but I still couldn't take your chance. You just used a blunt knife to cut me, and taught me how to live and eat. Simon King scolded, Bitch whore, you really don't take off your clothes. I don't have any good intentions. Come on, he called Chunmai. There is a horsewhip behind the door, come and get it for me. Chunmai didn't even come into the room. She called for a long time before slowly opening the door and entering. He saw the woman kneeling on the floor of the bed, leaning under the table in front of the lamp. Simon King asked him not to move. The woman shouted, Chunmai, my sister, please save me, save my son. He is going to beat me now, Simon King said. Little oily man, you don't care about him. Just hand me the horse whip and beat this whore, wife. Chunmai said, Dad, how can you be so shameless? What did your mother do to you? Do you believe the words of an adulterer? And when there is a turmoil in the land, you want to search for your mother. You still teach people to have your own plan. Come on, how can you make people look up to you? But I don't listen to you. He closed the door and walked ahead. Simon King couldn't help it, but he laughed and said to Jinlian, I won't hit you. Come up here. I will ask you for a penis. Will you do it with me or not? The woman said, I wish you a kiss. All the bones and flesh of this slave belong to you. Whatever you want, I will obey you. I wonder what you want in your heart, Simon King said. I want you to have good hair on your head. The woman said, Okay, my darling. You can choose whatever you want on my slave body and it's burned all over. This guy who can't cut his hair is just scaring me to death. This slave is a mother-in-law and has lived for 26 years. He has never done this kind of business. Come on, the hair on my head has fallen out a lot lately. Just treat me as a pity, Simon King said. You only blame me for being angry, but you don't obey what I say. The woman said, If I don't obey you, who should I depend on? Because he asked, What are you really telling me? What do you want me to do with this hair? Simon King said, I want to make a net scarf. The woman said, If you want to make a net scarf, I will make it with you. Don't take it, whore. Teach him how to suppress me. Simon King said, I don't want to be easy on others. I want you to be the top line. The woman said, You have to be the top line, and the slave will cut you off. Then the woman parted her hair. Simon King took the scissors, pressed the top of the woman's head, and cut off a large piece of willow, wrapped it in paper and put it in a bag. The woman then fell into Simon King's arms and cried sweetly, "I will depend on you in everything. I just hope you will never forget your heart, and you can go ahead and be nice to others. I just don't abandon my family." It was that night when I met him happily, abnormal. The next day, when Simon King got up, the woman sent him to eat, then went out to ride a horse and went straight to the courtyard. Sister Gui asked, "Where is his hair that you cut?" Simon King said, "Yes, here it is." He took it out of the eggplant bag and handed it to Sister Gui. Opening it up, you can see that black oil is also good for hair. Just put it in your sleeves. Simon King said, "Why don't you tell me after seeing this?" He had a hard time cutting his hair yesterday. I changed my face and became annoyed, so he allowed me to cut off this willow. I coaxed him and just said he would make a net. The top thread of the scarf, I brought it in for you to see. It shows that I have not broken my promise. Sister Gui said, "What a rare thing. You are so panicked. When I go to your house, I will return it to you. You are more afraid of him. There is no need to cut his hair." Simon King said with a smile, "I'm afraid of him. I can't say anything." Sister Gui asked Gui King to accompany him to drink, went behind his back, and took the woman. "My hair has been cluttered under my shoes for a long time, and it's no problem to be kicked around every day." But Simon King was entangled and refused to let him go home for several days. Ever since Jin Lian had her hair cut off, she felt unhappy. She stayed out of her room every day and had nothing to do but eat and drink. Wu Yunyang asked her servant to invite Mrs. Liu, who often visited the house, to come and have a look. She said, "My wife is a little angry. She is angry in her heart. She can't turn around. She has a headache and nausea and can't eat." She opened the medicine bag and left to take the black pill medicine. "Take it with ginger soup at night." Then she said, "I will ask my husband to come tomorrow to help you check whether there is any disaster in this passing year." Jin Lian said, "It turns out that your husband can do it too." "Fortune telling?" Liu Po said, "Although he is blind, he has 2 or 3 skills. First, he is good at fortune telling of yin and yang, and he can help others get married. Second, he is good at acupuncture and moxibustion to heal sores. Third, he can't tell, so he can tell people's fortunes alone." "Back?" the woman asked. "Why do you mean back?" Mrs. Liu said, "For example, if father and son are at odds, brothers are not harmonious, or the older wife and the younger wife are fighting. I will teach my husband to talk about it and use the security objects to stabilize it for him. Draw some talisman water and eat it with him. It will take less than 3 days to teach him that father and son are affectionate, brothers are harmonious, and wives and concubines do not fight. If people's business is not going smoothly and their fields and houses are not prosperous, they often open up money and make money with others. Treat diseases and spread the stars. He is good at complaining, so people call him Liu Lizing. He is also a member of the same family. He has a newly married daughter-in-law who is a daughter of a small family. She is a little unsteady and often steals things from her mother-in-law's house and goes to her parents' house. My husband knows about it and is often beaten. I am the husband turned back to him, drew a talisman, and buried the ashes under the water vat. The whole family ate the water in the vat and saw his wife stealing, as if he didn't see it. He also put a small object in the pillow, a man. When he sleeps on that pillow, it's like his hands are sealed, so he won't be beaten again." When Jin Lian heard this, he paid attention and called the girl to send tea, soup and snacks to Granny Liu. Before leaving, I packed 3 coins for the medicine and weighed another 5 coins to buy a paper token. Ask Liu Shi to come and burn the sacred paper at breakfast tomorrow. The woman made a speech and went home. The next day, as expected, early in the morning, he led the thief blindly into the gate and walked inside. That day, when Simon King was still in the courtyard, the gatekeeper asked, "Where are you going, blind man?" Liu Po said, "Today I'm burning paper with 1 yang inside." The boy said, "Since I'm burning paper with 1 yang, old Liu, please lead me in. Watch the dog carefully." The woman took the lead and went to the bright room of Pan Jinlian's bedroom. After waiting for half a day, the woman came out. The blind man saw the gift and sat down. The woman told him the horoscopes, and Thief Blind squeezed them with his hands and said, Mrs. Zhengshan year, Zhang Yin month, Yihai day, Jichu time. Spring begins on the 8th day, and it is already the first month for fortune telling. According to Ziping Zheng's theory, my wife's fortune, although the horoscope is very strange, it will not be helped by the husband's star in life, and there will be some obstacles in the child. Yimu is born in the first month, and it is also said that the body is prosperous, so it is not suitable for self-immolation. There are also 2 layers of Zhang metal. The sheep blade is heavy, and it is difficult for the husband's star to do it. It's better to overcome too. The woman said, I have overcome it. The blind man said, don't blame the villain for your fate. Although Ziping took the evil seal, he only ate the gui water in Heizhong. There is gui water in the ugliness. Too much water, only 1 layer of sea soil is impulsive, and the official and evil spirits are mixed. In theory, if a man is in charge of authority, a woman will be punished if she is in power. Therefore, the Lord is smart and resourceful, and is favored by others. There is only one thing. This year, the year is fleeting, and the fortunes of the year are coming together, and disasters are imminent. I am destined to have a small loss, and the 2 stars are interfering. Although they cannot be hurt, they are at odds with each other. The villain's tongue is often touched. He seemed to be chirping and restless. After hearing this, the woman said, Mr. Lei, you are careful and attentive, and you go back and forth with me. I have a tail of silver here to thank you and buy a cup of tea. I don't want anything else. I just hope that the villain will leave and my husband will love and respect me. He walked into the room, pulled out 2 pieces of jewelry and handed them to Thieves. Thief Blind put it in his sleeve and said, now that the villain has to turn his back, use a piece of willow wood to carve 2 human figures of a man and a woman, write the birthdays of the wife and husband, and tie them together with 7 or 49 red threads. Use it on the top. A piece of red gauze was covered in the man's eyes. His heart was stuffed with moxa, his hands were nailed with needles, and his feet were glued with glue, and he was buried secretly in the pillow where he slept. He also burned the cinnabar script with ashes and stirred the tea secretly. If the husband had tea and slept on the pillow in the evening, after only 3 days, it will naturally be verified. The woman said, excuse me, sir, what do you mean by these first springs? The thief said, I can teach my lady how to know. Cover your eyes with gauze so that your husband will see you as beautiful as a she. Use moxa to make his heart fall in love with you. Use needles to nail your hands so that he can do whatever you want, so that he will not dare to hit you again. Use glue to glue your feet, so that he will never go there again. When the woman heard the words, she was filled with joy. At that moment, he prepared incense, candles, and paper horses and burned the paper for the woman. The next day, he sent Mrs. Liu to give the talisman water token to the woman. They settled down as usual, burned the talisman to ashes, and drank some good tea. When Diamond King's family arrived, the woman asked Chunmai to bring him tea. In the evening, I slept with him in the same bed. After 2 days and 3 days, we were like water and fish, and we were extremely happy. Watch and hear, no matter how big or small a person is, be it a master, a nun, a monk, a wet nurse, or a nanny, remember not to provoke them. What things can you do behind your back? There are 4 proverbs from the ancients. Don't let the third wife walk in front of the hole, and the back door is always locked. If there is a well in the courtyard to guard against small openings, it means that there will be less misfortune and more blessings.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.